You're listening to Olivia's Book Club, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. And I'm still your host, Olivia Fierro. Very excited to talk to you today and have our very special guest. So after the author interview, stick around. Margaret's going to be joining us with some book recommendations, what she's loving right now, including a work of nonfiction assigned by her new job, which is unusual. So we'll be taking some notes on that. But now let's get to this, baby. It is The House Across the Lake. If you read any magazine or any article or peruse anything, you ever look up from any kind of cave that you might be living in, you'll know that it's on pretty much every list of most anticipated or best books to read for this summer, and rightly so, because it is the latest from Riley Sager. So Riley, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us, returning to this podcast a second time. We survived the night, and now we are ready for a little Vermont vacation.
Now we're going to the lake in Vermont, yes.
So I am not at all surprised that this book is getting all of the hype and all of the love that it deserves, because it is fantastic. And it's super fresh in my mind. I just finished it yesterday. So set the scene for me, because last time we were on a very high-stress road trip. You're bringing stress back into our lives, that's for sure. But we're technically in a serene spot, just relaxing on the lake.
Yeah, I'm ruining lake vacations for many, many people this summer. The House Across the Lake takes place on, obviously, a lake. And it is about an actress named Casey Fletcher who's gotten herself into some bad publicity, you could say, and her mother forces her to go to the family's lake house to escape the paparazzi. And while she's there, she meets the acquaintance of Tom and Katherine Royce, this glamorous, perfect couple who live in the house across the lake. And she begins to drink a lot and spy a little on them. And because what else are you going to do at a lake house alone? Mm-hmm. And she starts to think that maybe their marriage isn't as picture perfect as it seems, and that maybe there's some trouble brewing. And then one day Katherine disappears and Casey thinks Tom is responsible, and craziness ensues, basically.
So, yeah, Casey is a creative spirit. Obviously, she's an actress, a performer. She's gone through a lot of recent trauma, so she's isolated for good reason, but not necessarily in the state where she's going to be doing a lot of healing. She's boozing and she's obsessing, and she's not using her time maybe in the most productive way that her friends and family would hope that she would. This is a very interesting woman to get kind of into. And I kept thinking about you and putting yourself in this female protagonist. So and you're very comfortable doing that. You've done so in the past. How do you get into this mindset? Because we were on a spiral with her for sure, and I understood why.
Yeah, she has reasons for some of the crazy stuff that she does, including the drinking. Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't difficult for me to get into her headspace because, one, I really love her as a character. Like, she is a train wreck, but she's a nice train wreck. She does things with like good intentions, just in the worst possible way sometimes. And I understood her from the standpoint of like, we've been kind of just stuck in our homes all alone for quite some time. When I wrote this book, the pandemic was still raging. I hadn't gone anywhere except a lake house in Vermont. This is where I got the idea for the book. Yeah. And so it was very easy to put my, head in the head of a character who's like, wow, I'm stuck here. I'm all alone. I might as well drink and get out the binoculars and look out the window, because what else am I going to do here? And yeah, it was very fun to write her.
Well, it's especially because, okay, so for somebody who is she's used to a fast-paced lifestyle. She's an actress. She performs on Broadway. She's a recognizable person. People know her from film and television. She's been in the business, bi-coastal with a husband that's a screenwriter as well. And then all of a sudden things come to a kind of grinding halt. And not all of us, as we learned during the pandemic, respond well to that slow down, especially when we're not choosing it, and when it seems to go on and on. So it's easy to see, and I think there's a lot of us with the personality that what is tranquil for a short period of time, like a vacation, could kind of become a little maddening over a prolonged period of time when that has to be your new normal. And that's really what she's going through.
Yeah, so it was my pandemic novel, even though it does not mention the pandemic at all. But I think lots of people who spent some time at home just being like, I just got to get out of here. I'm going stir crazy, will very much relate to her.
Definitely. So we've talked before about, and I've heard you talk with others about sort of the way that you, how different people define your genres, right? So is it thriller? Is it mystery? Is it suspense? Is it horror? Where do you put House Across the Lake?
I put all of my books, including House Across the Lake, in the psychological thriller genre, but all of them, to some degree or another, do borrow from horror. And so I kind of move among genres, sometimes in the same book, where I like not having that defined space, where I like to be free to just, I'm going to do some horror now, and then let's add some romance here, and then let's add some just psychological suspense.
Well, and I think that your book there should be like a little camera on readers as they're going through it, especially at certain parts. I mean, wouldn't that be a fun thing if you could figure out how to do without any spoilers, but just have kind of a group cam where then you get and I just, when I think all of the surprises have already knocked me out, there's more. Oh, there's something else is happening that's catching you off guard, because it's a ride.
It is indeed. And I do have a very good friend of mine. She's like the first person to read anything I write. She will text me in real time as she's reading what she's thinking. And it's so valuable, because sometimes it's like, oh, she's onto what I'm doing here, and I might need to change it. And other times I'm like, I'm totally fooling her right now, and I love it. And when she got to the plot twist of this book, her text was just, I can't say it, because there were some like very strong words in there.
Bleep. What the bleep?
It was like, what the beep is happening right now? Like all caps, like exclamation points. And I'm like, that is exactly the reaction I was hoping for.
And I think I said that out loud, but like nobody was around me. I was talking to myself, because I was just like reacting. Like, what is, so that is so fun, and it is an adrenaline rush. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have to know what is next. Take me please to this location in Vermont where you're actually writing. I mean, what was this writing experience like for you? How did it compare to some of the other books that you've sat down to write, especially given the circumstances and the environment?
Well, it intended to be a vacation. Like, seriously, I wanted to go on vacation because the pandemic had just ruined all plans. And so it came to a point where I just wanted to get out of the house. Like, get out of the house and go to someone else's house. I don't care. And so I rented a lake house in Vermont, and it's very much like the lake house depicted in the book, on a lake very similar to the one in the book. And really, the very first night we arrived, I poured myself a bourbon, walked out on the porch, which just comes right up to the water. There's rocking chairs. So it's all just like it in the book. And I just sat down, sipped my drink, and stared at the lights of the houses on the other side of the lake. And instinctively, I just kind of leaned in and went, who lives there? What are their lives like? What secrets are they hiding? And then it just hit me. I'm like, Rear Window on a Lake. That is going to be my next book. And I spent most of that vacation plotting out what eventually became this book. So it was a very working vacation.
Well, it was a quarter of it into it, and we do a lake trip for a Labor Day weekend with some of my college girlfriends and their families. And so I thought, I'm going to make everybody read this beforehand so we can kind of make up stories about anybody that we encounter or see across the lake and, have a whole thing of it. It's a must-do.
Yeah, there are beach reads, and those are wonderful. I made the lake read. So it's this summer's lake read.
Yeah. See, speaking of genre bending, right? We're creating new genres every single time. Something new is happening with the Riley Sager book. Let me know if you were to be watching somebody. Say you were to have binoculars. Do you own binoculars, by the way? Because there are some binoculars described very detailed here.
I do not own binoculars.
Okay.
Which is probably for the best, to be honest.
Because you'd be like, they're for birding, right? Yeah, sure
birding,
they are.
Of course.
Everybody's into birding. If you were to own binoculars and you were to observe a neighbor, somebody across your vacation home lake, or, anybody in general, what would be a scenario that you would actually enjoy being able to peek into?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I would or not. Like, I'm curious just about how people live in general. Like, I am that person, like, driving down a street and you see like a house with like a big picture window and it's all lit up, just not to like spy or anything, but just see like, oh, what are they doing? What are they watching? What are they eating? Like, how do these people live? So it's just curiosity about how other people live when they think no one else is watching. So it's not like nothing sinister, nothing like, salacious going on. It's just like, it is this curiosity of like, because we all have our own lives and we're all in our own little spaces. And it is interesting to see, okay, how do other people literally live?
I think so too. I mean, you everybody presents something, but you kind of want to know what are the inner workings of behind the closed doors and who's where and how everything goes. So let's flip it around. If I've got binoculars and I'm looking into your household on any given afternoon, evening, it's dinner time, what am I going to see? Is it boring? Is it interesting? Is there something weird going on?
It's so boring. Like in the afternoons, you'll probably see me like in that chair in the background, like with my laptop, like just struggling to write my next book and being like, this is so hard every single time. And then in the evening, it's probably me like with a glass of wine, cooking dinner while listening to Taylor Swift. Like that's usually like my evening plan. But
are you dancing to Taylor Swift? Because that's worth spying on.
No, I sing along.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So as the cycle of your books and your creativity go, I mean, everywhere, any encounter you have, I imagine any, true crime thing you come across or any person you meet or environment you travel to is potential inspiration for books. Do people in your world or who meet you and learn what you do have any hesitation ever about thinking that they may become inspiration for one of your books, or are people kind of coming at you sometimes with, they would love for some little tidbit of some weird thing that happened to them to make it into your stories?
I would appreciate if they did. Like if people hesitate to tell me things now, they don't show it.
Okay.
So maybe like all of my friends and family, like behind my back are being like, don't tell him about this. It's got to be in the, just stop. Like they probably are but just don't. You're going to end up in a book. Stop.
But the inspiration is everywhere, right? You're always looking.
Oh, it's yes. And it is like just watching the news or going like just today, I read an interesting article that, and I'm not even going to say what it's about because it might become like a future book where it's like, oh yeah, that's fascinating to me. So then they just come, and if they leave my head rather quickly, then because I never write anything down.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So the things that stick in my head that won't go away are the ones that I know, okay, I'm still thinking about this after 6 months. So maybe this is an idea worth working on.
So you don't write things down when you do sit down and it is time to write and you've got a deadline and all of that, or, how outlined are you? Do you know exactly where your book is going?
Usually, yes. I'm very much an outliner. Sometimes like I just write down like chapter by chapter what happens and who does it and when and all that stuff. And then other times I just keep it up here. So like House Across the Lake, I didn't write an outline, but I knew pretty much what was going to happen when and what craziness was going to ensue. So it was always in my head, stored up here.
So Casey is an actress, and she had been dismissed for good cause from a show on Broadway.
Yes.
And I mean, this is obviously some primo real estate because she's across the street from, as we mentioned, we've got Katherine and Tom, the glamorous Royce couple. Well, she's a model. He's a tech guru who would be, you know, the kind of household name guy. As you're writing Katherine, I have to imagine that you're thinking about somebody. You're thinking about, were you envisioning a famous person, a modeler, an image, somebody who was kind of an iconic beauty because the visual of Katherine's perfection across the lake is sort of one of the reasons why Casey just can't help herself but to wonder what's going on over there.
Yeah, I did. I pictured like early 90s Christy Turlington.
Oh, good one. Mm-hmm.
Where she this just perfect beauty, but also there was like this girl next door sense of niceness, and you weren't intimidated by her like you are some other supermodels. And I wanted Katherine to be this combination of just perfection personified and also just really down to earth and likable, because I knew that I needed the reader to care what happens to her. And I wanted Casey to, at first, Casey's like, oh gosh, she's too perfect. I'm not sure I like her, but I can't help it. I think I like her.
Yeah. Yeah, the bond feels very organic between the two, and they have kind of a mutual mutual understanding because of the backgrounds that they bring to the lake. If you were to see an adaptation of this book or one of your most recent books, I know that you are a theater fan. Could you see some of this on the stage or only on screen?
Only on screen, yeah. I think. I mean, maybe some of them, maybe Lock Every Door would work on stage, but this one would, I think, definitely have to be a movie.
Yeah, definitely. So what happens next for you? And I know you're actually going on a tour. So you're going to be in Scottsdale, the Poison Pen, June 21st, which is the day of the book release when people are listening to this podcast. So that's very exciting. Be prepared because it's going to be probably 1,000 degrees. So that'll be a nice relief for you.
Yes, I've been warned.
Will you be enjoying going out on a book tour, or is it kind of, I mean, we sort of switched to this Zoom lifestyle. Did you appreciate being able to stay a little separated from the world?
It was very easy promoting books from this room for the past 2 summers, but I am really eager to just get out and meet readers in person again and meet booksellers for the first time face to face and just hang out. But then again, it's also intimidating because I really haven't done much of that in the past 2.5 years. And so I do have concerns about like, oh gosh, do not get COVID halfway through this book tour. Do not get COVID halfway through this book tour. So it'll be hopefully enjoyable, but there is going to be some tension where, you know, it's like, okay, just keep the mask on and just don't do anything dumb and you will get through this unscathed.
Maybe some sort of like a Scottsdale, you could do like some sort of like pool flotation device that would keep people like at a distance just naturally. Some sort of,
yes,
right?
Or even a poolside book event. I'd be down for that.
That would be great. Yeah, but we have to make sure that we're covering the head.
I've learned definitely sunblock right here.
We would feel terrible if you got sunburned while visiting Arizona. Is there anything that you can share with us about what's coming up next? I'm sure that you probably already have your next idea in the works, or is there movement on some of these other projects to the screen?
I'm currently working on the next book that will probably be out next summer at this time. And I can't say anything about it because I just don't like to give too much away,
Yeah.
because when you talk about an idea,
Mhm.
it gets less interesting. Like you do this, you go to a person, you're like, okay, my next book is going to be this. And then after you tell them, usually they're like, oh. And so they're not as excited as you are, and then you get not excited, and then it's just, so I just stay quiet. No, for movie stuff, like I'm not sure how much I can say. Like
Ooh.
Hollywood has come calling about The House Across the Lake.
Oh.
And so hopefully there are exciting things that can be announced hopefully soon. But with things like this, I'm so out of the loop. Like I want no involvement in any of it because I just don't quite know how any of it works. So
We'll wait and see.
yeah, I wait and see too. Like sometimes I'll get an email like, okay, this is moving forward, or this is not moving forward. And it's just, I just kind of then go back to writing my next book.
Yeah, I mean, already the peak of personal satisfaction happened for you, right, with that. It was the Stephen King tweet.
Oh, the Stephen King tweet. Yeah, and that was early on, so it's all downhill from here.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
one way. That's one way to look at it. Last but not least, what have you been enjoying? TV or other books, or I know you love music. I've been laughing a lot about this whole Stranger Things phenomenon and the songs, like the type of songs that we were talking about the last time with Survive the Night, like great 90s music is now brand new to a whole audience of people, and people have never heard Kate Bush running up that hill before, and it's that's kind of blowing my mind. So it's what are you listening to, or what are you watching right now or reading?
Right now I'm just finished up the second season of Hacks, which I loved. There are two shows on Peacock that just, one was called Angeline and the other is Girls Five Eva.
Oh my gosh, I just binged
hysterical.
Girls Five Eva. I've never laughed so hard in my life. It's amazing.
I love that show so much. Like I download the theme song to my iPod and like I listen to it when I'm working out. It's that I'm that obsessed with this show.
Oh my God, that is amazing. And I love that all your entertainment sources are the opposite of what your creative output is. You're living in a perfect harmony right now.
Yeah, people are surprised where I get asked like, okay, what scary movie have you seen? Have you seen this, splattery slasher? I'm like, no, I've been watching repeats of Park and Recreation.
You're like, but Girls Five Eva.
Yes.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for talking with me again. I really appreciate it. And the book is just phenomenal. And I just was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? So thank you for taking me to the lake and introducing us to Casey and Katherine and Tom and Boone and Eli and all of the interesting things that go down out there.
It was my pleasure writing it, and it was my pleasure talking to you again.
It's time now for a moment with Margaret. And Margaret, we were just listening, of course, to the interview with Riley Sager, House Across the Lake. And it is only because of you that I found the magic that is Riley Sager. So thank you. That means it's time for you to recommend more books and more writers.
Anytime. Yes, love Riley Sager. Read all of his books, still waiting on to finish up House Across the Lake. So we'll see how I feel about that one. I actually read one fiction, one nonfiction book that these are books that I've really loved recently. No topic, just ones that I've been thinking about the most. The first I'll say is a nonfiction. I'll do that one first. This was actually presented to me as a leadership opportunity with my new job, and it is Permission to Screw Up by Kristen Hadid. And this is the millennial founder of Student Maid, which was a cleaning service put on by college students looking to make a little bit of extra cash. She didn't actually mean to start a company, but ended up doing so. And I think the nice thing about this is, a lot of the leadership books, it's an old white guy who's been around the block, I guess, but maybe failed up a little bit. And it's all one way of thinking. Generationally speaking, the way that businesses are run now are very different than even 10, 20 years ago. So just hearing her perspective and all of the mistakes that she made along the way is really refreshing, because I feel like a lot of people within my generation feel that they are not given the room to make mistakes, that perfection is the highest level. And just hearing from somebody who's been through it from the ground up and encouraging others to find the silver lining in their mistakes is very empowering.
That, and I think that it's such an interesting and important and valuable opportunity to set a tone for a culture and for, you know, the aspirations that you have for a team and for the future, your new team members and your future leaders. And what an easy and direct way to do so, handing somebody some reading material. And you're the second person that I know that has recently started in a new position and been given something to read to kind of set the tone for, you know, moving forward. And it makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of disappointing and surprising that more companies don't do this, because it would help everybody under a big roof have a better understanding of what like the common goals are, and better understanding of sort of the bumps that will come along, or, you know, naturally on a path to success.
Yeah, it's funny because I've only been at this job for 3 months, and I've already have 2 leadership books. And what I think is really refreshing as well is when you hand somebody a book, you don't just say, here's this book, goodbye. It is, here's this book, and this is what I would like, you know, as follow-ups. Like we had one follow-up with the author, Kristen Hadid, and we'll have another one in the fall. So just knowing that there are benchmarks for that, and benchmarks for our learning and our understanding of what's going to make us better team members, better leaders within the company, that education doesn't stop with handing the book.
Yeah.
The whole point of, I mean, that's what book clubs are made, to discuss books. No one has a solitary thought. And especially when you want someone to follow in your footsteps, you need to guide them, right? So to just somebody a book and be like, sayonara, it just doesn't work that way. So I'm so glad that other companies are following through on that as well.
You have also a work of fiction that stood out to you recently.
Oh yeah, this one is not for the faint of heart. If you were into the bush, like many of us were and are, and continue to recommend, this book, Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel, incredible. This is, I mentioned this to you, but this is a book that I was, for Memorial Day weekend, I was going out of town and was at the airport, and I was listening to it as an audiobook, and I sat in the parking lot of the airport finishing out the prologue, because there was no way I was getting on that plane without finishing this book. Yeah, it was really good in the sense that, you know, this is a cult that, you know, they describe in fairly loose terms at the beginning, but you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And this girl and her cousin are separated once the cult gets kind of broken up, and they go through an adoption process. They've lost each other, and as adults, a DNA test brought them back together. And the cousin that was found, Andrea, she has a lifestyle company that is now working in robots is kind of a, well, you know, those babies that they give you in like sociology class, like you have to
keep it alive.
Sure is alive. Yeah. And if it cries, but this lifestyle company, she's making a more lifelike version of these babies, and it's to help it's like a fertility center, clinic, help group thing like that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of weird stuff starts happening, and
of course,
as like family does, like, come little cousin who broke this cult apart, come with me and live with me and let us rebond. And there are some things in this book that I audibly said, what the hell? But not a lot of other words. I was like, I could kind of see some things coming, but not everything. And the webs that are built are really great. And if you want a little juicy thriller for the beach, I'd say that's one to go with. Also, the cover is creepy.
Thanks for listening to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. Our editor is Nick Sanchez. You can send us an email with your thoughts or your book recommendations. Olivia's Book Club at azfamily.com is the address. And you can check out Olivia's Book Club on Facebook or find us on Instagram. Hello, Bookstagrammers, at olivias.bookclub. And Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast and tell your friends. You can find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music.
This is Olivia's Book Club, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.